The restaurant's private dining room buzzed with congratulations. My daughter Maya sat at the head of the table, her valedictorian sash draped perfectly over her navy dress. Extended family members filled the space, their phones out to capture what should have been a celebration of her academic achievements. I watched from my seat near the middle of the table as relatives praised Maya's accomplishments. 4 years of maintaining a perfect grade point average while working part-time, a full scholarship to medical school starting in the fall, and recognition from the university president during the ceremony that afternoon. "Such a smart girl," Aunt Linda said, raising her wine glass. "You must be so proud." I smiled and nodded. Pride didn't begin to cover what I felt watching Maya accept her diploma earlier that day. She'd worked harder than anyone I knew, balancing coursework with her job at the campus library, never complaining about the long hours or difficult exams. My mother sat at the opposite end of the table, her posture rigid. She'd barely spoken to Maya during the ceremony, offering only a brief nod when we arrived at the restaurant. My father sat beside her, checking his phone intermittently. The waiter brought out the main courses. Conversation shifted to Maya's plans for medical school, her intended specialty, and the competitive program she'd been accepted into. Uncle James asked detailed questions about her research project, genuinely interested in her work on cardiac regeneration. "She gets her intelligence from our side of the family," my mother announced suddenly. The table quieted. "Though intelligence doesn't pay bills." I felt the shift in atmosphere immediately. Maya's smile remained fixed, but her hand tightened around her fork. "That's true," Aunt Linda said carefully. "Medical school is expensive." "I have a full scholarship," Maya reminded them gently. "Tuition, books, and a stipend for living expenses." My mother waved her hand dismissively. "I'm not talking about Maya's expenses. I'm talking about freeloaders who think education entitles them to live rent-free." She was looking directly at me. My father shifted uncomfortably. Uncle James suddenly became very interested in his salmon. The cousins exchanged glances, unsure whether to intervene or stay silent. "Mom," I said quietly, "this is Maya's celebration dinner. Which makes it the perfect time to discuss adult responsibilities," she continued. Her voice carried that particular tone I'd heard throughout my childhood, the one that brooked no disagreement. "You're 42 years old. You have a college degree. Yet you still live in our house, contributing nothing." The waiter approaching with the wine bottle stopped mid-step, read the room and retreated. "I contribute to the household," I said evenly. Maya's eyes met mine across the table. I gave her a small shake of my head. This wasn't her fight. "Grocery shopping occasionally doesn't count as contribution," my mother said. "Your father and I have been discussing this. We've been more than generous, allowing you to live rent-free while you raised Maya. But she's graduated now. She'll be moving to her medical school housing. There's no reason for you to continue taking advantage of our generosity." Aunt Linda set down her fork. "Maybe this conversation should happen privately?" "Why?" My mother's eyebrow arched. "We're all family here. Everyone should understand the situation. No more free living. Starting tomorrow you'll pay market rent or find somewhere else to go." Uncle James cleared his throat. "What's market rent in your neighborhood now?" $2,800 a month, my father said quietly. He looked uncomfortable but didn't contradict my mother. "That's fair for the area." I reached for my water glass, taking a slow sip. Maya had gone very still, her valedictorian sash suddenly seeming like a mockery against the tension filling the room. "That seems reasonable," Aunt Linda said, though her tone suggested she was trying to defuse the situation rather than agreeing. "Everyone should contribute to household expenses." "Exactly," my mother said. "We've carried the financial burden long enough. 42 years old and never owned property, never built equity. Living off family charity." The cousins stared at their plates. Uncle James signaled the waiter for more wine. "I think that's fair," my father added, finding his voice. "You've had plenty of time to get established. Maya's success proves we provided a good home. But it's time for you to stand on your own feet." I set down my water glass carefully. The leather portfolio I'd brought sat beside my chair. I'd planned to give it to Maya after dinner, filled with documents about the trust fund her grandmother had left for her education. But it contained other papers too. "You're right," I said. My mother looked surprised that I'd agreed so easily. This is the perfect time to discuss property and financial responsibilities. I pulled the portfolio onto my lap and opened it. The documents inside were organized with colored tabs, everything in order. I'd always been meticulous about paperwork. Since we're discussing rent and property ownership, I continued, pulling out the first set of papers, I think everyone should understand the complete financial situation. My mother's eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? The house you're currently living in, I said. The 4-bedroom colonial at 847 Maple Street. You want to charge me $2,800 a month in rent. It's our house, my father said. We've owned it for 30 years. I slid the first document across the table. Uncle James picked it up, his eyes scanning the text. His expression changed immediately. This is a property deed, he said slowly. Dated 15 years ago. Let me see that, my mother demanded, snatching the paper from his hands. Her face went pale as she read. What does it say? Aunt Linda asked. I pulled out another document. 15 years ago, when you were facing foreclosure, you came to me. You asked for help. I had just received my inheritance from Grandma Patricia, $240,000. The table had gone completely silent. Maya's eyes were wide, watching the scene unfold. You used that money to save our house, my father said. We paid you back. You paid back $70,000 over 3 years, I corrected. Then the payment stopped. You said business was slow and you needed time. I said it was fine. We were family. My mother's hand trembled slightly as she held the deed. This doesn't mean anything. It means everything, Uncle James said, still reading over her shoulder. This deed transfers ownership. Full ownership. You didn't just loan them money. You bought the house. I pulled out more documents. Bank statements showing the mortgage payments I'd been making for 15 years, property tax receipts in my name, insurance policies listing me as the owner. Every piece of paper meticulously filed and documented. When you couldn't pay me back, I explained, we agreed to a different arrangement. You transferred the deed to me. In exchange, you could live there rent-free. The agreement was clear. I would cover the mortgage, taxes, and insurance. You would maintain the property. It seemed like a fair solution that kept everyone housed. Aunt Linda leaned forward to see the documents. You've owned their house for 15 years? The mortgage will be paid off in 3 more years, I said. I've been making payments of $1,800 monthly, plus property taxes of about $6,000 annually, plus insurance. Over 15 years, that's roughly $430,000 I've invested in that property. My mother's face went from pale to red. You never told anyone. You asked me not to, I reminded her. You said it would be embarrassing if people knew you'd lost the house. I respected your privacy. My father stared at the documents spread across the table. We assumed. You assumed I was living off your charity, I finished. When actually I've been providing housing for you while raising my daughter and working full-time as a database administrator. I work remotely, which is why I'm always home. Not unemployed. Not freeloading. Working. Maya's expression shifted from shock to something else. Pride, maybe. Or vindication. This can't be legal, my mother said. We'll fight this. Uncle James shook his head. It's completely legal. I can see the notary stamps, the county registrar marks. This deed is legitimate and recorded. I pulled out one final document. This is from my attorney. I had her draw it up last week just in case this conversation happened. It's a formal notice regarding the property at 847 Maple Street. My father reached for it with shaking hands. As he read, his face crumbled. What does it say? My mother demanded. It's an eviction notice, he whispered. 30 days to vacate the property. The dining room erupted. Aunt Linda gasped. The cousins started talking over each other. Uncle James held up his hands for quiet. You can't do this, my mother said. We're family. You just demanded I pay $2,800 a month in rent, I said calmly. At my own house. In front of my daughter on her graduation day. After years of letting you believe you were supporting me out of generosity. We didn't know, my father tried. If you just told us. I did tell you, I said. Every year when I filed taxes. Every time the insurance needed renewing. Every conversation about the property. You chose not to acknowledge it because it was more comfortable to see me as dependent on you. Maya finally spoke. Grandma, you've been telling people for years that Mom lives in your house rent-free. I heard you at Thanksgiving. At parties. At my high school graduation. We thought it was true, Aunt Linda said weakly. You thought what was convenient, I corrected. Nobody asked questions. Nobody wondered how a database administrator with a steady income and an inheritance could possibly need housing charity. The waiter appeared cautiously with dessert menus. Uncle James waved him away. So what happens now? My father asked. Where are we supposed to go? I gathered the documents back into my portfolio. You have 30 days to find alternative housing. The property will be prepared for sale. Given the market value in that neighborhood, I expect to clear about $600,000 after the remaining mortgage is paid. My mother's hands were shaking. This is revenge. Over one comment about rent. This is about 15 years of disrespect, I said. 15 years of being treated as a burden while funding your lifestyle. 15 years of watching you take credit for providing for Maya and me while I paid the bills. We raised you, my mother tried. Doesn't that count for something? It counts for the 15 years of free housing I already provided, I said. But respect is a two-way street. You demanded rent at my daughter's graduation dinner in front of family, without any acknowledgement of reality. Uncle James cleared his throat. For what it's worth, I think you've been more than fair. 15 years of free housing far exceeds any childhood debt. Don't you dare take her side, my mother snapped. I'm not taking sides, he said. I'm reading legal documents and doing basic math. She's been paying your way for 15 years. She has every right to stop. Maya reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Can we go home now? I nodded and stood. I think we're done here. Wait, my father said desperately. Can't we talk about this? Work something out. You had 15 years to acknowledge reality, I said. You chose pride over honesty. Now you have 30 days to find housing you can actually afford. Aunt Linda started crying quietly. The cousins looked everywhere except at my parents. This will destroy us, my mother said. Everyone will know we lost our house. Everyone already knows, I said. They've known for 15 years. They just didn't know you were pretending otherwise. I helped Maya with her coat. Her valedictorian sash caught the light as she adjusted it. Congratulations again, sweetheart, Uncle James said to her. You earned everything you achieved. Thank you, Maya said. And thank you for always treating my mom with respect. We walked out of the restaurant together. Behind us, I could hear my mother's voice rising, my father trying to calm her, Aunt Linda attempting to mediate. In the parking lot, Maya turned to me. You really own the house? I really own the house, I confirmed. And you've been paying for everything this whole time? Everything. She hugged me tightly. Why didn't you ever say anything? Because they're still my parents, I said. And I hoped eventually they'd see me clearly without needing to be forced into it. But they didn't. No, they didn't. We drove home in comfortable silence. The house at 847 Maple Street sat dark when we pulled into the driveway. My parents wouldn't be back for hours, probably staying at the restaurant, arguing with relatives about the unfairness of it all. Maya headed upstairs to change. I sat in the living room I'd been furnishing and maintaining for 15 years, looking at family photos on the mantel. Pictures of Maya's childhood, of holidays and celebrations, all in a house my parents believed they owned. My phone buzzed. A text from Uncle James. Your attorney's contact info? We should talk about fair market rent for their next place. I'll help them find something realistic. I sent him the information. Then I opened the portfolio again and looked at the final document I hadn't shown anyone. An offer from a property management company to rent the house for $4,200 a month once my parents moved out. More than enough to cover the remaining mortgage and finally start building actual profit from my investment. Maya came back downstairs in comfortable clothes, her sash carefully hung in her closet upstairs. Do you think they'll really leave? They'll leave, I said. The law is very clear about property ownership. Good, she said firmly. You deserve better than how they treated you. I pulled out the other half of the portfolio's contents. Speaking of what you deserve, Grandma Patricia left you a trust fund for medical school. Even with your scholarship, you'll need money for living expenses, equipment, maybe a car. Her eyes widened as I showed her the balance. $50,000, carefully invested and grown over the years, waiting for this exact moment. You've been taking care of everyone, she said softly. That's what family does, I said. Real family. The kind that sees you clearly and supports you honestly. She hugged me again. Outside, a car pulled into the driveway, my parents home earlier than expected. I watched through the window as they sat in their car, neither moving to get out. Tomorrow I'd call my attorney and begin the formal eviction process. Tonight I'd celebrate my daughter's achievements in the house I'd worked 15 years to maintain. Maya went to make tea. I stayed on the couch, surrounded by years of memories in a home that had always been mine, waiting for my parents to finally come inside and face the truth they'd been avoiding for far too long. The doorbell rang. Not my parents using their key but actually ringing the bell. A small acknowledgement perhaps that something fundamental had shifted. I went to answer it, ready for whatever conversation came next, secure in the knowledge that I'd done nothing wrong. I'd provided, I'd supported, I'd been patient for 15 years. But patience and charity have limits, especially when met with disrespect at your daughter's finest moment. I opened the door. You'll be clearing tables like him, Marcus said, pointing his fork at the teenage busboy struggling with a tray of dishes near our private dining room entrance. That's your son's future, Elena. Minimum wage. No prospects. Just like his mother. The private dining room erupted in laughter. My sister Jennifer threw her head back, wine sloshing dangerously in her glass. Her husband, Marcus, leaned back in his chair, that familiar smirk plastered across his face, clearly pleased with his own wit. My mother dabbed her eyes with her linen napkin, actually crying from laughter at her grandson's supposed destiny. Tom's wife, Amanda, covered her mouth, trying to hide her smile and failing. Marcus, stop, Jennifer managed between giggles, but she was grinning. You're terrible. My son David, 12 years old, sat beside me with his book open. He didn't look up. He'd learned years ago not to react to his aunt and uncle's comments. I reached under the table and squeezed his hand once. He squeezed back. I'm serious though, Marcus continued, gesturing around the upscale restaurant. The kid barely passes his classes. What else is he going to do? At least food service is honest work. My brother Tom nodded from across the table. Marcus has a point. Not everyone can be successful. Someone has to do the grunt work. This was supposed to be my father's 70th birthday dinner. Dad sat at the head of the table, uncomfortable but silent. He never intervened. Never had. Elena, you should really consider his future realistically, my mother added, her tone dripping with concern that fooled no one. Maybe a trade school? Something practical for his limitations. David's limitations. My son, who read college-level philosophy texts for fun. Who taught himself 3 languages from library books. Whose limitations included being too quiet, too thoughtful, too unlike the loud, flashy grandchildren my mother preferred. I think David will be just fine, I said quietly. Oh, Elena. Jennifer rolled her eyes. You always say that. But look at you. Still renting that tiny apartment. Still working that little bookkeeping job. No offense, but the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Marcus leaned forward, warming to his subject. He'd had 3 glasses of wine. You know what your problem is, Elena? No ambition. You're content being mediocre, and now you're raising David to be the same way. I'm happy with our life, I said. Happy. Tom snorted. That's what unsuccessful people say when they've given up. The waiter appeared to take our orders. Marcus ordered the most expensive steak on the menu. Jennifer got the lobster. Tom ordered for both himself and his wife without asking her preference. My mother requested the prix fixe menu with wine pairings. What about you, David? The waiter asked kindly. The chicken, please, David said quietly. Thank you. The chicken, Marcus repeated mockingly after the waiter left. Even orders like someone who's given up. At his age I was. We know, Marcus, I interrupted. You've told us many times. His eyes narrowed. Excuse me. I said we know. You were exceptional at 12. Star athlete. Perfect grades. President of everything. We've heard it all before. Jennifer's smile vanished. There's no need to be rude, Elena. I wasn't being rude. I was being accurate. This is exactly your problem, Marcus said, his voice rising. No respect. No understanding of success. Look at this restaurant. This is where successful people eat. This is the world David will never be part of because you're raising him to be a failure. I opened my laptop bag and pulled out my computer. Set it on the table. What are you doing? Jennifer asked sharply. Checking something, I said, opening the screen. I pulled up a folder. You mentioned this restaurant. Dominic's. It's lovely, isn't it? It's where people with standards dine, Marcus said. Not that you'd understand the difference. I clicked through several files. The ambience is excellent. The service is impeccable. The revenue figures are outstanding. Tom frowned. What are you talking about? The quarterly reports, I said, turning the screen slightly. Dominic's flagship location grossed $2.3 million last quarter. The suburban locations average $1.1 million each. Quite impressive for a regional chain. Marcus stared at me. How do you know that? Because I own it. Kept my voice level. Come. I own all 7 Dominic's locations. Purchased the chain 18 months ago through my investment firm. The table went silent. You're lying, Jennifer said, but her voice wavered. I clicked to another document. This is the acquisition agreement. A $47 million total purchase price. And this, I pulled up another file, is the current portfolio valuation. The chain is now worth $61 million. My mother's face had gone pale. That's impossible. It's documented, I said. I can have my attorney send you copies if you'd like. Marcus's wine glass was frozen halfway to his mouth. He set it down carefully. You don't have that kind of money. I do actually. I pulled up my investment portfolio summary. The restaurant chain is just one asset. There's also the commercial real estate holdings, 6 office buildings, 2 mixed-use developments. The equity portfolio spread across technology, healthcare, and sustainable energy sectors. The private investments in 3 tech startups, 2 of which are preparing for acquisition. Total assets under management, approximately $340 million. This is a joke, Tom said, but he was leaning forward trying to see the screen. It's not a joke. I turned the laptop so they could all see. My bookkeeping job, as Jennifer called it, is actually a private wealth management firm. I have 17 clients. I manage their investments and acquisitions. The small apartment David and I live in? I own the building. All 42 units. Jennifer's hands were shaking. Why didn't you tell us? You never asked. You were too busy explaining my failures. The door to our private dining room opened. The restaurant manager entered, a woman in her 40s with a professional smile and an expensive-looking tablet in her hands. Good evening. I'm Claire Morrison, General Manager. I wanted to personally ensure that everything is satisfactory for Ms. Vega's party this evening. The kitchen staff asked me to convey that they're honored to be preparing your father's birthday dinner. Marcus looked like he'd been slapped. Ms. Vega. Claire smiled at me. Of course, Ms. Vega. We're honored to host you this evening. The staff has been instructed to provide exceptional service. Is there anything you need? Everything is perfect, Claire. Thank you. Wonderful. Please don't hesitate to call if you need anything at all. She nodded to the table and left. My mother found her voice. Elena, I don't understand. If you have all this money, why do you live the way you do? What way, Mom? Quietly. Modestly? I like our apartment. David likes his school. We don't need to prove anything to anyone. But you let us think, Jennifer started. I let you think what you wanted to think, I said. You decided I was a failure. You decided David had no future. I never confirmed or denied anything. I just lived my life. Tom was staring at his plate. All this time, I agreed. Every family dinner. Every Christmas. Every comment about my limitations, my poor choices, my disappointing life. I sat there and listened. Marcus cleared his throat. Look, Elena, if I said anything that seemed cruel? I asked. That seemed designed to humiliate me and my son? You didn't seem cruel, Marcus. You were cruel. All of you were. The waiter returned with appetizers. The table remained silent as plates were distributed. I want you to understand something, I continued once the waiter left. David doesn't have limitations. He has interests that don't match your definition of success. He reads philosophy because he loves thinking about complex ideas. He's quiet because he's thoughtful. And his future? He'll be absolutely fine. Elena, we're family, my mother said weakly. Surely we can. We can what? Pretend the last 12 years didn't happen? Pretend you didn't compare David to his cousins at every opportunity? Pretend Marcus didn't just tell my son his future was clearing tables. Jennifer was crying now, mascara running. We didn't know. You didn't want to know. You were comfortable with your assumptions. It made you feel superior. My phone buzzed. I glanced at it. Excuse me for a moment. I stepped out of the private room and called my attorney. Martin, I need you to prepare something for me. A breakdown of the Dominic's acquisition, the current holdings, and a summary of the operating agreements. Yes, tonight. Email it to me within the hour. Thanks. When I returned, my father was finally speaking. Elena, I had no idea you were doing so well. I know, Dad. You never asked either. He winced. The main courses arrived. No one seemed to have much appetite. Marcus cut his steak mechanically. Jennifer pushed the lobster around her plate. My mother hadn't touched her food. David was eating his chicken, still reading his book. What are you reading, sweetheart? I asked. He showed me the cover. Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. It's about stoicism and how to deal with adversity. I smiled. And what do you think? I think it's interesting. He says we can't control what other people think or say about us. We can only control how we respond. That's very wise. Marcus set down his fork. Elena, I apologize. I was out of line. You were. I didn't realize. That I was successful? That should not have mattered, Marcus. Even if I was exactly what you thought I was, a struggling single mother working a modest job, that wouldn't have given you the right to mock my son. You're right. I know I am. My phone buzzed again. I glanced at the email from Martin. Perfect. I pulled it up on my laptop and turned the screen toward the table. This is the complete documentation of my ownership of this restaurant chain. This section here details the management structure. Claire Morrison reports directly to my chief operating officer. The staff you see working tonight? I signed their paychecks. The menu you ordered from? I approved those prices. Tom had gone very quiet. That busboy Marcus pointed at? I continued. His name is Jason. He's working his way through community college. I'm paying his tuition through the employee scholarship program I established. In 2 years he'll have his degree in hospitality management. Then I'm planning to promote him to assistant manager. Marcus looked ill. Jason has more ambition in his little finger than you've shown this entire evening, Marcus. He's building something. Bernie. Growing. Just like David will. Elena, please, Jennifer whispered. Can we just what? Move past this? Pretend it didn't happen? We're sorry, my mother said. Truly. I appreciate that. But apologies don't erase years of dismissiveness. The table fell silent again. Dessert menus were brought and ignored. Finally Tom spoke. What happens now? Now. You all finish your dinner. You celebrate Dad's birthday. And then you go home. And us? Jennifer asked quietly. Our relationship? I looked at my sister. At her husband. At my mother and brother and father. That's up to you. You can choose to actually see David and me for who we are, or you can continue with your assumptions. Either way, we'll be fine. We want to do better, my father said. I want to do better. Then do better, Dad. All of you. Claire returned as we were finishing. I hope everything was satisfactory? It was excellent, Claire. As always. Wonderful. Should I bring the check to the table? Yes, please. When Claire returned with the leather folder, she placed it in front of Marcus. He opened it reflexively, then froze. The total was $3,847. Actually, Claire, I said, tonight's dinner is being billed to the individual guests. Separate checks, please. Claire smiled knowingly. Of course, Ms. Vega. I'll have those prepared immediately. Marcus's face went white. Jennifer grabbed his arm. Tom started to protest, then thought better of it. Elena, that's not necessary, my mother began. I think it is, Mom. You all ordered the most expensive items on the menu. You should pay for what you ordered. It's only fair. David closed his book and looked up at me. He was smiling slightly. Claire returned with separate checks. Marcus's portion was $847. Jennifer's was $723. The others were similarly expensive. "This is ridiculous," Marcus muttered, pulling out his credit card. "No," I said. "This is accountability." They paid in silence. My father offered to cover David's and my meals, but I declined. Those were being comped anyway, though I didn't mention it. As we prepared to leave, I pulled Claire aside. "The family scholarship fund I mentioned? Add another $50,000 to it. For employees like Jason." "That's very generous, Ms. Vega. It's an investment in people who deserve it." In the parking lot, my family stood awkwardly by their cars. Jennifer approached me, eyes red. "I really am sorry, Elena. I was horrible." "Yes, you were. Can we try again?" "Better." I looked at David, who was watching the exchange quietly. He nodded slightly. "We can try," I said. "But things will be different now." "I understand." As David and I drove home in our modest sedan, he finally spoke. "You didn't have to defend me like that." "Yes, I did. You're my son. I know you own the restaurant. I figured it out months ago when I saw the papers in your office." I glanced at him. "You knew. I'm observant. You taught me that." He smiled. "I also knew you'd handle it when the time was right." "And was tonight the right time?" Uncle Marcus pointing at Jason and saying that was my future? That was the right time." I reached over and squeezed his hand. "Mom." "Yes. Can we still get ice cream from that place by our apartment? The one you don't own?" I laughed. "Absolutely." We drove home through the quiet streets, leaving the expensive restaurant and its expensive lessons behind us. Tomorrow my family might call. They might apologize again. They might even mean it. But tonight, David and I would get ice cream from Mr. Kim's corner shop, go back to our apartment in the building I owned but they'd never valued, and be perfectly content with our supposedly limited lives. Sometimes the best revenge isn't showing people what you have. It's showing them what they failed to see. The serving platters circulated around my parents' dining table like they did every Sunday, a tradition that had continued unbroken for nearly 2 decades. Roast beef, mashed potatoes, green beans, almondine. The same menu, the same china, the same seating arrangements. My son sat beside me, his economics textbook half hidden under his napkin. He was preparing for his university entrance exams, studying whenever he could find a moment between family obligations. My brother-in-law Marcus leaned back in his chair, gesturing with his wine glass like a conductor leading an orchestra. He ran a successful car dealership downtown and he never let anyone forget it. Every conversation somehow circled back to his latest sale, his newest acquisition, his expanding empire. His wife, my sister Jennifer, sat beside him wearing the diamond earrings he'd bought her last month after closing a particularly lucrative deal. She touched them frequently as if to remind everyone they were there. The dining room felt smaller than usual, packed with extended family. Uncle Robert and Aunt Patricia occupied the seats nearest my parents. My younger cousin Tom sat across from David, scrolling through his phone with barely concealed boredom. My mother moved between the dining room and kitchen, ensuring every dish was perfectly presented and every glass kept full. "So David," Marcus said, addressing my 15-year-old son. His voice carried across the table, cutting through multiple conversations. "What are your plans after high school? Following in your mom's footsteps with the cleaning business?" The table quieted instantly. Forks paused midair. My parents exchanged uncomfortable glances across the table, a silent communication perfected over 40 years of marriage. I ran a small commercial cleaning company, something Marcus found endlessly amusing. He'd made jokes about it for years, each one slightly more pointed than the last. David looked up from his textbook, his expression neutral. He'd inherited my ability to keep emotions hidden. "I'm applying to business school actually. Economics major." Marcus laughed, the sound sharp and dismissive, bouncing off my mother's carefully arranged wall decorations. "Business school? That's ambitious for someone whose family scrubs toilets for a living." Jennifer didn't defend us. She never did. She'd stopped defending me around the time Marcus bought his second dealership and their social circle expanded beyond people who remembered us as equals. My parents focused intently on their plates, suddenly fascinated by the precise arrangement of roast beef and potatoes. "He's got excellent grades," I said quietly. "Top 5% of his class." Grades. Marcus waved his hand. Let me tell you about the real world, kid. I started with nothing and built an empire. 3 dealerships now. That's real success, not some theoretical classroom nonsense. He reached behind his chair and produced a mop, the wooden handle worn smooth from years of use. I recognized it from my parents' hall closet. He must have grabbed it before dinner, planning this moment of humiliation. Here, Marcus said, extending the mop toward David with a theatrical flourish. Practice for your future. Get a head start on the family business. Maybe you'll be as successful as your mother someday. The relatives around the table chuckled nervously. Uncle Robert smiled into his napkin, his shoulders shaking slightly. Aunt Patricia raised her eyebrows but said nothing, her silence as damning as any laugh. My father cut his roast beef with surgical precision, refusing to meet my eyes. The knife scraped against the plate with each cut, the only sound in the suddenly tense room. David took the mop with steady hands. He didn't blush or argue or show any sign of embarrassment. He simply set it beside his chair with careful precision and returned to his textbook, finding his place on the page without missing a beat. You know what I love about real estate? Marcus continued, warming to his topic now that he had everyone's attention. He lived for moments like this when all eyes turned to him. Tangible assets. Real property. Something you can touch, something that matters. I just signed a lease on a new location for my 4th dealership. Downtown, prime location. 20,000 square feet of pure potential. That's the kind of move that separates the winners from the floor scrubbers. Congratulations, I said. My voice remained level, carefully modulated. Years of dealing with difficult clients had taught me to control my tone perfectly. The building owner was desperate to fill it, Marcus continued, oblivious to the shift in my posture. The previous tenant went bankrupt, left the place empty for months. I negotiated an incredible rate. 5-year lease, option to buy at the end. The property management company practically begged me to sign. I basically stole the place. I reached for my water glass, taking a slow sip. My laptop sat in my bag beside my chair, the leather handle worn from daily use. I'd brought it to show my parents some photos from David's academic awards ceremony last week, but I hadn't gotten around to it yet. The ceremony had been beautiful. David received 3 separate awards for academic excellence. Marcus and Jennifer hadn't attended. How much is the rent? Uncle Robert asked. He worked in commercial real estate for a competing firm and always wanted numbers, always measuring deals against his own portfolio. $48,000 a month, Marcus said proudly, his chest expanding. In that neighborhood for that square footage, that's a gift. The building's worth twice that in rental value. The property management company said I was their ideal tenant. That's the Morrison building, right? Uncle Robert asked, leaning forward with interest. On 5th and Main? 8 stories. The one with the Art Deco facade. That's the one. 8 stories, underground parking garage, updated electrical, the works. My new flagship location. I'm moving my best sales team there next month. I opened my laptop. The screen glowed in the dimming dining room light. My email application loaded automatically. Speaking of that building, I said conversationally, I should probably mention something. Marcus was already moving on to another topic. Jennifer and I are thinking about the Bahamas in March. David, maybe you can clean the boat before we leave. More chuckles from the relatives. My mother's fork clattered against her plate. Marcus, I said, my voice still quiet. About the Morrison building. What about it? He didn't even look at me. I turned my laptop screen toward him. The email thread was clearly visible. Property management reports, lease agreements, quarterly statements, all addressed to me. I own it, I said simply. The conversation stopped. Marcus's wine glass paused halfway to his mouth. You what? I own the Morrison building. I have for 3 years. I bought it from the Henderson estate when they liquidated. Jennifer's face went pale. That's not possible. You run a cleaning company. I do run a cleaning company, I agreed. We service 42 commercial buildings downtown. The Morrison building is one of them. I also happen to own 17 of those 42 buildings. The cleaning company is how I identify properties worth buying. Uncle Robert set down his fork. The Morrison building sold for $8 million. I remember the listing. $8.2 million, I corrected. I paid cash. Marcus's confident expression cracked. Your property manager said. Said the owner was desperate to fill the space? That was me. I was desperate. The previous tenant declared bankruptcy and left me with an empty building for 6 months. When your application came through, I told my property manager to accept whatever you offered. This is a joke, Marcus said, but his voice had lost its certainty. I pulled up another email. This is the lease agreement you signed last month. Notice the signature at the bottom? That's my property management company. I reviewed your application personally. My mother finally spoke. You never told us you owned buildings. You never asked what I did with the money I earned. Everyone assumed the cleaning company was all I had. David was watching me with quiet pride. He'd known for years. He'd helped me review property listings, learning about commercial real estate while other kids played video games. Marcus grabbed the laptop, scrolling through the emails. Lease agreements, maintenance reports, insurance documents. All legitimate. All mine. I need to make a phone call, he said, standing abruptly. He dialed his attorney right there at the table, speakerphone active. Tell her about the Morrison Building lease, Marcus demanded when she answered. His attorney's voice came through clearly. What about it? You signed it 2 weeks ago. Very favorable terms, I thought. Who owns the building? Papers rustled on her end. The property is held by Summit Commercial Properties, LLC. They own several buildings in the downtown area. Who owns Summit Commercial Properties? More rustling. The principal owner is listed as, oh, it's your sister-in-law. I didn't make that connection when I reviewed the lease. Marcus ended the call. His face had turned an alarming shade of red. You deliberately let me sign that lease knowing you owned the building? You submitted an application. I accepted it. That's how commercial leasing works. This is fraud. This is a conflict of interest. This is completely legal, Uncle Robert interrupted. He'd pulled out his own phone and was reading something. There's no legal requirement for a property owner to disclose their identity to a tenant. The property management company handled everything properly. Jennifer was staring at me like she'd never seen me before. How long have you been buying buildings? I bought my first property 12 years ago, a small office building in the warehouse district. I used the cleaning contracts to identify undervalued properties in good locations. When the 2008 financial crisis hit, I bought 4 more buildings at auction. Prices recovered. I kept buying. And you never said anything? My father's voice held something between awe and reproach. I tried to tell you about the first building. You told me I was being irresponsible with money, that I should focus on the cleaning business and stop having delusions of grandeur. So I stopped sharing. The table fell silent. Only the sound of my mother's antique clock ticking in the hallway. Marcus was scrolling through his phone frantically. The lease has a 6-month termination clause. I can get out of this. You can, I agreed. With 90 days notice and a termination fee equal to 3 months' rent. That's $144,000. Plus, you've already invested about $200,000 in renovations to customize the space. Those improvements become the property of the building owner when you leave. His scrolling stopped. Of course you're welcome to stay, I continued. The lease terms are quite fair. Below market rate actually. I wasn't lying when I said I was desperate to fill the space. You set me up, Marcus said. You let me humiliate myself. I let you be yourself, I corrected. I didn't hand you that mop. I didn't mock my son's ambitions. I didn't turn my success into a weapon against my family. Jennifer was crying quietly. My mother had her hand over her mouth. David's going to attend business school, I said. His tuition is already paid, full 4 years, room and board included. He'll probably take over the property portfolio eventually if he wants it. Or he'll do something else. Whatever he chooses, he'll do it without anyone handing him a mop and telling him to practice for his future. I closed my laptop and put it back in my bag. My plate was still full. I'd lost my appetite somewhere between the mop and the property revelations. We should go, I said to David. He gathered his textbook without a word. My mother found her voice. Please stay. We haven't had dessert. I think we've had enough for today. Marcus was still staring at his phone, reading and rereading the lease terms. Jennifer had her face in her hands. As David and I reached the door, my father followed us into the hallway. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "We should have listened when you tried to tell us about the first building." "Yes," I agreed. "You should have. Will you still come to Sunday dinners?" I looked back at the dining room. Marcus sat hunched over his phone. The mop still leaned against David's empty chair. "I'll think about it," I said. David and I walked to the car in silence. The evening air felt crisp after the stifling atmosphere of the dining room. He waited until we were on the highway, the city lights sliding past our windows, before speaking. "That was intense." "Yes." I kept my eyes on the road, but I could feel him watching me. "Are you really going to let him break the lease?" "Probably not. The termination fee alone would hurt his expansion plans significantly. He'd have to delay opening his fourth dealership, possibly cancel it entirely. And finding another space that size in that location with that much parking and those updated systems would cost him substantially more per month, probably 60 to 70,000. He'll stay. He'll complain about it, he'll resent it, but he'll stay. Will Aunt Jennifer forgive you?" I considered the question carefully. "Eventually. After she stops being embarrassed that her younger sister is wealthier than her husband. After she realizes I never actually lied to anyone. I just stopped sharing information that nobody wanted to hear. It might take months. It might take years." David went quiet for a moment, staring out the window at the passing landscape. Then he said, "Thanks for not letting him define my future with that mop. Your future is yours to define. Always has been. That mop was about his insecurity, not your potential." My phone buzzed with incoming messages, the vibrations constant against the center console. My mother, asking me to reconsider leaving to come back for dessert. Jennifer, demanding explanations, wanting to know why I never told her about the buildings. My property manager, asking if everything was all right with the Morrison building tenant, concerned about the abrupt phone call from his attorney. I silenced them all. The messages could wait. They'd all still be there tomorrow, and I'd answer them when I was ready. David returned to his textbook, studying by the light of passing street lamps, his highlighter moving across the page in steady strokes. His future stretched ahead of him, bright and open and entirely his own. No mops required. No limitations imposed by other people's narrow definitions of success. The Sunday dinner revelation would ripple through the family for weeks, maybe months. Marcus would stay in the building. The lease terms were too good and breaking it too expensive. His pride would take the hit rather than his wallet. But every month when he wrote that rent check, every single month for the next 5 years, he'd remember the day he handed a mop to a 15-year-old boy and told him to practice for his future. Some lessons are expensive. Some are just embarrassing. Marcus's lesson was both, and it would cost him $48,000 monthly for the privilege of learning it. The dining room fell into an uncomfortable silence as I continued scrolling through my phone, a slight smile playing at my lips. My sister Jennifer cleared her throat, trying to recapture the room's attention. "What I'm saying is, some people are built for success and others." She gestured vaguely toward my daughter Emma, who sat curled in the corner armchair with her book. "Others find their calling in service industries. Nothing wrong with that." My mother nodded enthusiastically. "Jennifer's children are so accomplished. Medical school, law school, and business school. A doctor, a lawyer, and an entrepreneur all in one family." Meanwhile, my brother Marcus chimed in, "Emma's been working at that bookstore for what, 3 years now? At 25, shouldn't she have more ambition?" Emma turned a page without looking up. I watched her carefully, the way I always did during these family gatherings. She'd learned early to let their words wash over her like rain on glass. "The bookstore pays her bills," I said quietly, setting my phone face down on the side table. Jennifer laughed, a sharp sound that cut through the room. "Barely, I'm sure. Thank goodness she has you to support her. My 3 are completely independent. In fact, they're all interviewing for prestigious positions next week." "Is that so?" I asked, picking up my wine glass. "Oh yes. Top companies are fighting over them. The connections we've built, the networking we've done as parents, it makes all the difference." She looked pointedly at me. "Of course, that requires actually pushing your children toward excellence rather than enabling mediocrity." My father joined in, emboldened by the wine. "Your problem was always being too soft. Kids need pressure to succeed. Look at Jennifer's 3, then look at Emma. The proof is in the results." I took a slow sip of wine. 23 years I'd been listening to this. 23 years since I'd brought Emma home as a 2-year-old adoptee, and my family had made it clear she'd never measure up to their biological grandchildren. Emma seems happy, I offered. Happy? Marcus scoffed. Happy doesn't pay for retirement. Happy doesn't build a career. She's 25 and working retail. She likes books, I said. We all like things, Jennifer said, her voice dripping with false patience. But adults don't get to just do what they like. They do what's necessary. What's profitable. My children understand that. Emma's eyes flickered up from her book for just a moment, meeting mine. I gave her the smallest nod. She returned to her reading. Speaking of your children, I said, my tone casual, what positions are they interviewing for? Jennifer preened. Well, I probably shouldn't say before the offers are finalized, but since we're family, Marcus Jr. is being considered for a junior partner track at Morrison & Associates. Sarah has interviews with 3 different hospitals for their residency programs. And David is being recruited by several tech companies for management positions. Impressive, I said. Which tech companies? Oh, several. The biggest one is some AI firm that's been in the news. Quantum something. Very cutting edge, very exclusive. They apparently only hire the best. I felt my phone buzz in my pocket but didn't reach for it. Quantum Edge Solutions? Jennifer's eyes widened. Yes. That's the one. How did you know? Lucky guess, I said, standing to refill my wine glass. It's been in the tech news lately. Well, David is interviewing for their junior management program. The recruiter said they only accept 5 candidates per year out of thousands of applications. But with David's MBA and his internship experience, he's a shoo-in. My mother clasped her hands together. 3 successful grandchildren. Jennifer, you must be so proud. I am, Jennifer said, then looked at Emma again. Though I suppose we should all be grateful for people who choose simpler paths. Someone has to work at bookstores and coffee shops. The world needs service workers too. Emma dog-eared her page and stood up smoothly. Excuse me, I'm going to get some air. As she passed my chair, she squeezed my shoulder briefly. A gesture so small the others probably didn't notice. But I felt the weight of it, the silent communication we'd perfected over 2 decades. See, Marcus said once Emma had stepped outside. She can't even handle a simple family dinner conversation. Too sensitive. Or perhaps she's tired of being insulted in her grandmother's dining room, I said quietly. Insulted? Jennifer's voice rose. We're being honest. Sometimes the truth hurts. You've done her no favors by sheltering her from reality all these years. What reality is that? That she's not like our children. She doesn't have the drive, the intelligence, the ambition. And that's fine, truly it is, but you need to adjust your expectations accordingly. I set my wine glass down with deliberate care. My expectations are perfectly aligned with reality, Jennifer. Are they, though? My father leaned forward. Because from where we're sitting, you've spent 23 years making excuses for a child who never lived up to her potential. Her potential, I repeated slowly. Tell me, what do you think Emma's potential is? Realistically. Jennifer exchanged glances with our mother. Service industry, maybe retail management if she really applies herself. There's no shame in it, but let's not pretend she's going to set the world on fire. My phone buzzed again. And again. I pulled it out, glancing at the screen. 3 new emails, all flagged urgent. All from my executive assistant. Problem at work? Marcus asked with false concern. Just some applications that need reviewing, I said, scrolling through the messages. On Thanksgiving? My mother tooted. Can't it wait? Probably not. These are time-sensitive interviews scheduled for next week. I looked up at Jennifer. For Quantum Edge Solutions, actually. The color drained slightly from her face. Oh, do you know someone there? You could say that. I stood, tucking my phone into my pocket. Emma, sweetheart, could you come back inside for a moment? Emma stepped back through the French doors, her expression carefully neutral. Could you pull up the company website on your tablet? I asked her. I want to show everyone something. She retrieved her tablet from her bag and handed it to me, the faintest smile playing at her lips. I pulled up the Quantum Edge Solutions homepage and turned the tablet toward the family. Beautiful site, I said. Very professional. Jennifer, look at this executive team page. Jennifer leaned forward, squinting at the screen. Her face went from pale to green in the span of 3 seconds. That's you, she whispered. Chief Executive Officer. Has been for 8 years now. Started the company 12 years ago with 2 partners. I scrolled down. We went public 3 years ago. Current valuation is around $4.2 billion. The silence in the room was absolute. But you, Marcus stammered. You work in tech consulting. I own a tech company, I corrected. The consulting was my side work when I was building Quantum Edge. I stopped consulting 6 years ago when we secured our Series C funding. My mother's hand trembled as she set down her wine glass. You never said. You never asked. I handed the tablet back to Emma. You all assumed that because I worked from home and kept flexible hours to raise Emma, I must be doing something small. Something unimportant. For $1 billion, my father breathed. Give or take a few $100 million depending on the market. I sat back down, crossing my legs. We're actually hiring right now. Expanding our junior management program. Emma mentioned it to me a few months ago after doing some market research. Jennifer's voice came out as a croak. Market research? Emma spoke for the first time in an hour, her voice calm and clear. I have a master's degree in business analytics from Stanford. Graduated last year. I've been working with Mom as a strategic consultant while I decided which sector I wanted to focus on. The bookstore, Marcus started, is owned by a friend who lets me use it as a quiet workspace, Emma finished. I help out sometimes because I enjoy it. But my actual job is analyzing market trends and competitive positioning for Quantum Edge and 2 other tech firms. You went to Stanford? My mother's voice was faint. Full scholarship, I said proudly. Based on her undergraduate work at MIT. She finished her bachelor's degree in 3 years with a double major in computer science and applied mathematics. Emma shrugged. I liked learning. Still do. That's why I'm always reading. Jennifer had gone completely silent, her face now an alarming shade of red. Anyway, I continued, pulling out my phone again, about those applications. Emma flagged them for me this morning. 3 candidates from the same family, all with decent credentials on paper. Marcus Thompson Jr., Sarah Thompson and David Thompson. Jennifer's hand flew to her mouth. The thing is, I said, scrolling through the applications, we do extensive background checks on all candidates. Not just professional history but character assessments. We interview people who know them, look at their social media presence and examine how they treat others. I looked up at Jennifer. Your children's references are excellent. Their qualifications are solid. But there's a problem. What problem? Jennifer whispered. Their mother. I set my phone down. See, we discovered through our standard investigation that their mother has a pattern of disparaging and belittling her niece at family gatherings. The same niece who happens to be our chief strategic consultant's daughter. The same consultant who will be supervising whoever we hire for these positions. You can't, Jennifer started. Can't what? Can't refuse to hire people whose mother spent 2 decades mocking my daughter? Can't protect my employee from having to work with the children of someone who called her a mediocre failure? I absolutely can. Emma pulled out her own phone. I actually documented tonight's conversation, Mom. Just audio, nothing visual. For the file. You recorded us? Marcus looked horrified. I documented a pattern of harassment, Emma corrected. There's a difference. Our legal team recommended it months ago when we realized the Thompson children might apply. Legal team. My father's voice was barely audible. Every major corporation has one, I said. Ours is particularly thorough. Jennifer found her voice, though it shook. You're going to destroy my children's careers because of a family disagreement? I'm going to decline 3 applications from candidates whose family situation presents a conflict of interest, I corrected. Your children are free to apply anywhere else, just not to a company where they'd be working under someone their mother has spent years demeaning. This is vindictive, Jennifer hissed. No, Emma said quietly. Vindictive would be blacklisting them from the entire industry. We're just protecting our workplace culture. Quantum Edge has a zero-tolerance policy for bullying and harassment. We can't very well enforce that while hiring people who might bring those dynamics into our office. My mother spoke up, her voice pleading. Surely you can separate business from personal matters. We do, I said. That's why we're having this conversation now rather than surprising Jennifer later. I wanted her to understand that actions have consequences. You all spent 23 years assuming Emma was less than your grandchildren. You mocked her, dismissed her, suggested she had no future. I stood, walking to where Emma Saturday, but Emma never needed you to believe in her. He had me. And while you were all so busy congratulating yourselves on your children's conventional success, my daughter was building something extraordinary. We didn't know, my mother whispered. You didn't ask, Emma said simply. Not once in 23 years did any of you ask what I was studying, what I was interested in, or what I was working toward. You just assumed. Jennifer's voice turned bitter. So this whole time you were just waiting to humiliate us? No, I said firmly. I was just raising my daughter and building my company. You chose to make assumptions. You chose to be cruel. Those were your decisions, not mine. The silence stretched out. Finally, my father spoke. What happens now? Now. I picked up my purse. Emma and I are going home. You'll all receive formal declination letters for the 3 applications. Your children are talented enough to find positions elsewhere. And us? My mother asked. The family. I looked around the room at their shocked faces. That's up to you. You can choose to treat Emma with respect going forward, or you can choose to keep seeing her as less than. But understand that your choice will have natural consequences. Emma stood beside me, slipping her tablet into her bag. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. We walked to the door together. As I reached for the handle, Jennifer's voice stopped me. I'm sorry. I turned back. She was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. I'm sorry, she repeated. I was cruel. I was wrong. I needed everyone to see my children as successful. They are successful, Emma said gently. You didn't need to tear me down to build them up. We left them sitting in the wreckage of their assumptions, the Thanksgiving dinner grown cold on the table. In the car, Emma finally let out a long breath. That was intense. You handled it perfectly, I said, starting the engine. Did you really flag their applications? The moment they came through, I recognized the names. I pulled out of the driveway. Did you really record tonight? Every family dinner for the past 6 months, she admitted. Just in case we ever needed documentation. I laughed, the sound surprising both of us. That's my brilliant, strategic, always 3 steps ahead daughter. Learned from the best, she said, settling back in her seat. As we drove home through the dark streets, my phone buzzed with messages. Apologies from my mother, anger from Marcus, desperate pleas from Jennifer about her children's careers. I turned off my phone and focused on the road ahead, my remarkable daughter beside me, finally free from the weight of their expectations. They'd spent 23 years underestimating her. That was their loss, not ours. The graduation party was in full swing when my brother-in-law decided to make his move. Tables filled the backyard, white tablecloths catching the afternoon sun, while relatives I barely recognized helped themselves to the catered buffet. My son stood near the gift table, still wearing his cap and gown, accepting congratulations from aunts and uncles who had barely acknowledged his existence throughout high school. Marcus approached with that familiar smirk I'd learned to ignore over the years. My sister followed 2 steps behind, her expression already apologetic in that way that told me she knew what was coming but wouldn't stop it. Congratulations, graduate, Marcus announced loudly enough for nearby tables to hear. He pulled something from his jacket pocket with theatrical flair. I got you something special. My son's face lit up with genuine hope. At 18 he still wanted to believe the best in people, even people who had spent years proving they didn't deserve it. Marcus held out his closed fist, building the suspense. Relatives turned to watch. My mother set down her plate. Even the caterers paused their work. He opened his hand to reveal a plain yellow pencil, the kind you'd find in a box of 50 at any office supply store. Not even sharpened. Here's a pencil. That's all you'll ever need, Marcus said, his voice dripping with false cheer. Community college doesn't require much, right? Save your money for something important. The laughter started at Marcus's table and spread like wildfire. My uncle slapped his knee. My cousin nearly choked on her wine. My mother pressed her napkin to her mouth, but her shoulders shook with suppressed giggles. My son took the pencil, his smile frozen in place. I watched his fingers close around it, knuckles white. "Thank you," he managed, his voice barely audible. "What was that?" Marcus cupped his ear mockingly. "Speak up, community college boy." More laughter. Someone actually applauded. I felt my phone vibrate in my pocket. The timing was so perfect it almost felt scripted. I pulled it out and glanced at the screen. The message was from Patricia, my assistant at the firm. "Board meeting in 30 minutes. They need your approval on the Henderson loan extension. Marcus Henderson. 72 hours until default if not approved today." I looked up from my phone. Marcus was still basking in the attention, accepting congratulations from my uncle for his hilarious gift. My sister touched his arm, whispering something, but he shrugged her off. My son had moved away from the gift table, the pencil still clutched in his hand. He wasn't crying. That would come later, probably in his room where no one could see. He'd learned early that showing emotion in this family only gave them more ammunition. I walked toward Marcus slowly, my phone still in my hand. The laughter died down as people noticed my approach. My sister's face went pale. "That was quite a gift," I said, keeping my voice level. Marcus grinned wider. "Just being practical. No point spending money on fancy presents for a kid going to community college. Save that for the real achievers, right?" "Right," I agreed. Speaking of money and being practical. I held up my phone, making sure he could see the screen. His eyes flicked down, then back to my face. I watched the confusion settle in. "Your loan extension," I said quietly. "The board meeting is in 25 minutes now. They need my approval." The blood drained from his face so quickly I almost felt sorry for him. "Almost. You're bluffing," he said, but his voice had lost its certainty. I pulled up my email and turned the phone toward him. The message chain was clear. Marcus Henderson, Henderson Commercial Properties, $70 million development loan, default imminent without extension approval, board awaiting decision from the Director of Commercial Lending. My sister grabbed his arm. "Marcus, don't. Please don't do this." But I wasn't doing anything. "Not yet." "I don't understand," my mother said, her voice cutting through the silence that had fallen over the party. "What's happening?" "Marcus applied for a loan extension 6 months ago," I explained, still looking at my brother-in-law. "His commercial development project ran into some complications. Cost overruns, contractor issues. The usual problems that happen when someone tries to build an empire without proper planning." Marcus's jaw clenched. "This is a family gathering. We can discuss business later." "You brought business to the party," I pointed out. "That pencil was your way of reminding everyone that my son isn't worth investing in." "I thought we could discuss investments while we're on the topic." "I was joking," he said quickly. "It was just a joke." "Jokes are funny," my son said quietly from behind me. Everyone turned to look at him. "That wasn't funny." Pride swelled in my chest. He was finding his voice. Marcus tried to recover. "Look, I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings, but this is ridiculous. You can't hold a business loan hostage over a graduation gift." "I'm not holding anything hostage," I said. "I'm simply deciding whether to recommend approval to the board. It's what I do every day. Evaluate risk, assess character, determine if someone is worth the investment." My sister stepped between us. "Please." "He didn't mean it. You know how he is. He jokes around. It's just his way." "His way has been to belittle my son for 4 years," I said. "Every family dinner, every holiday, every achievement. When my son made the honor roll, Marcus asked if they gave out participation trophies for showing up. When he won the science fair, Marcus said playing with baking soda volcanoes wasn't real science. When he got accepted to college, any college, Marcus made sure everyone knew it wasn't good enough." The backyard had gone completely silent. Even the caterers had stopped moving. "I didn't know," my mother whispered. "You laughed," I reminded her gently. "Every time. All of you laughed." My uncle had the grace to look ashamed. My cousin suddenly found her wine glass fascinating. Marcus's phone rang. He pulled it out with shaking hands, looked at the caller ID and went even paler. "That's probably your business partner," I said. "Robert called me this morning. He's very concerned about the loan situation. He mentioned something about dissolving the partnership if the extension doesn't go through." Marcus answered the call, his voice tight. "Not now, Robert." He listened for a moment. I said not now. He hung up and shoved the phone back into his pocket. The board is waiting, I said, checking my watch. 20 minutes now. What do you want? Marcus asked through gritted teeth. An apology? Fine. I'm sorry. I apologize for the pencil. I apologize for everything. Happy. Not to me, I said. To him. I pointed at my son, who stood there with that cheap yellow pencil still in his hand, looking smaller than he should on what was supposed to be his day. Marcus turned to face him. The smirk was completely gone now, replaced by something closer to panic. I apologize. The pencil was inappropriate. I shouldn't have mocked your college choice. My son looked at me, then back at Marcus. Why did you? What? Why did you spend 4 years making fun of everything I did? What did I ever do to you? Marcus opened his mouth, closed it, then opened it again. No answer came out. He's jealous, my sister said quietly. Everyone turned to stare at her. She looked at her husband with something like pity. He's been jealous since the beginning. When you started dating someone who actually graduated college. Someone with a career that didn't require family money to get started. Someone whose son might actually surpass him. That's not true, Marcus protested weakly. It's completely true, she said. I've watched you tear down a child for years because you were afraid of being overshadowed. I should have stopped it. I should have said something. He turned to me. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I let it go on this long. My phone buzzed again. Patricia, 15 minutes. Board is assembled. Henderson file is ready for your review. I need to make a call, I said. Excuse me. I walked toward the house, my son following close behind. Behind us, I could hear the party dissolving into uncomfortable murmurs and awkward conversations. Inside, I sat at the kitchen table and pulled up the Henderson file on my phone. My son sat across from me, still holding that pencil. Are you really going to deny his loan? He asked. I'm going to make an honest assessment, I said. That's my job. Because of the pencil? Because of 4 years of systematic cruelty toward someone I love, I corrected. Because character matters when you're lending $70 million. Because someone who treats family that way might treat business partners, contractors, and clients the same way. Because risk assessment includes evaluating whether someone can be trusted. My son nodded slowly. What if he changes? Then he changes after facing consequences, I said. Real consequences, not just embarrassment at a party. But Aunt Sarah will be affected too. Smart kid. Always thinking about the bigger picture. Aunt Sarah married him knowing who he was, I said gently. She's made choices too. But I'll talk to her separately, make sure she's protected regardless of what happens with the business. He set the pencil on the table between us. I'm not going to community college. I know. I got accepted to Stanford. Full academic scholarship. I found out last week. My breath caught. What? I didn't tell anyone because I knew what would happen, he said. Uncle Marcus would find a way to make it about him. Or tear it down. Or make it seem like it wasn't real. So I just kept quiet. Pride and heartbreak warred in my chest. Pride that my son had accomplished something so remarkable, heartbreak that he'd felt the need to hide it from his own family. When were you going to tell me? Tonight, after everyone left. I wanted it to be just us. I pulled him into a hug, this brilliant boy who'd learned to protect his joy from people who should have celebrated it. My phone rang. Patricia's name flashed on the screen. The board, my son asked. I nodded and answered. Patricia. They're ready for you, Director. The conference line is open. Should I connect you? I looked at my son, at the pencil on the table, at the backyard visible through the window where my family sat in uncomfortable silence. Connect me, I said. The line clicked. 5 voices greeted me, the board members I'd worked with for 8 years. We have the Henderson file, the chairman said. $70 million extension request. Default imminent without approval. Your recommendation? I looked at the pencil again. Such a small thing. Such a devastating message. Denied, I said clearly. Risk assessment indicates poor character judgment and questionable decision-making patterns. I cannot recommend extension approval. Silence on the line, then. Noted. The board concurs with your assessment. Extension denied. Henderson Commercial Properties has 72 hours to cure default or face foreclosure proceedings. They disconnected. It was done. My son stared at me. You really did it. I really did. What happens now? Now. I picked up the pencil and snapped it in half. Now we celebrate your acceptance to Stanford properly. Just you and me. No one who'll try to make it small. We heard the back door open. Footsteps approached. My sister appeared in the kitchen doorway, mascara streaked down her face. He's outside crying, she said. Robert called again. The partnership is over. The business is done. Everything he built is gone. Everything he built on loans he couldn't repay, I corrected gently. Everything that was already failing. I just stopped pretending it wasn't. She nodded, wiping her eyes. I know. I've known for months. I just didn't want to face it. What will you do? I don't know. But I do know I'm sorry. For everything. For not protecting your son. For choosing my husband over my nephew. For laughing when I should have stood up. My son stood and hugged his aunt. She broke down completely, sobbing into his shoulder while he patted her back awkwardly. It's okay, he said. It's going to be okay. Always the bigger person. Always kinder than they deserved. Outside I heard car doors slamming. The party was breaking up early. Good. It was never really about celebration anyway. Just another opportunity for performance and judgment. My mother appeared at the door. I don't understand what just happened. Marcus gave your grandson a pencil and told him it was all he'd ever need, I said. I showed him what need actually looks like. She looked at the broken pencil on the table, at my son, at me. He got into Stanford? Full ride, my son confirmed. Her face crumpled. And we've been treating him like he was nothing. Not nothing, I corrected. Just not worth investing in, according to the people who should have loved him most. She left without another word. Through the window I watched her gather her things and leave with my uncle, both of them looking decades older than they had an hour ago. My phone buzzed one final time. Patricia. Henderson default filed. Board meeting adjourned. Congratulations on another successful risk assessment. I deleted the message and turned off my phone. What now? My son asked. How we order pizza, I said. And you tell me everything about Stanford. Every single detail. And I listen like I should have been listening all along, without waiting for permission from people who never deserved a vote. He smiled, really smiled for the first time all day. Can we get the good pizza? Not the cheap stuff. The best pizza, I promised. Because you deserve the best. Not a pencil. Not scraps. Not conditional love based on other people's insecurities. The absolute best. We ordered from the expensive place downtown. While we waited, he showed me his acceptance letter, his scholarship details, his dorm assignment. He talked about classes and professors and dreams he'd been afraid to voice. And I listened. Really listened. Making up for all the times I'd let other voices drown out what mattered most. The pizza arrived. We ate in the kitchen, just the two of us, while the sun set on the worst and best graduation party I'd ever attended. My son threw the broken pencil in the trash on his way to get plates. He'd need much more than that at Stanford. And thanks to